because it's so stretchable, that's really cool when you're learning a second language, learning how to ride a bike, all of that. It's like, woohoo! I mean, I am amazed at some of the stuff my grandkids know that I didn't know when I was that age. Their brain is just there to stretch, but it's also very stretchable, and the plasticity is there in that way if somebody forces you to stretch, right? You're not wanting to learn on your own, but somebody does it in an abusive way. Like, this is what we're doing now. Your brain is going to stretch right now, right? I'm going to tell you this and this and this. I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to do whatever. It's saying you either have to shut down and try not to hear it and disassociate, or I'm just pulling your brain into something. Now you had the experience and it's too late. The balloon of information went out there, and now you know and you can't not know. So it's so God to stretch your brain in such a way for positive things, but it's so evil when someone forces your brain to stretch into wicked things, right? So when that happens, then it's already grown into that. So now it's like, well, what do? Can't throw out your brain. The neuroplasticity can't go, well, we'll just get rid of that. But there is something to it where as it grows out and expands to this new concept that's evil, that's hurtful, that someone took advantage of you or whatever it was, it's like when it grew out to that now, the brain is saying, what do we do next? Right? Well, you didn't want the first thing that happened to be done that grew you to that point, and now it's going, well, what do we do now? Is there more to this? Well, some of the traumas that have happened to us, they happened, and then it stopped, and we walked away. We went to live with grandma. Whatever the situation was that got us away from what stretched us into that trauma, it got us away from that. But yet, your ending point of where your neuroplasticity ended is still in that thought, isn't it? You can move to Chicago. You can go to Texas. I don't care where you're going. What's in your head is in your head. How your brain operated in that. So you can only change how you view what's in your head. You can't say, well, I don't want that in my head, so there, now it's out in my head. No, once you know, you can't not know. So in the negative, if it's there, now you know that negative thing. And so you can go, I don't want to see it. Dissociation would say, I just ain't going to associate with that thought. How many of that works for you? For a moment, you can dissociate for a day sometimes. Sometimes we're pretty good at disassociation. It's not healthy, but we're literally saying, I will not acknowledge that part of the brain that stretched into something new that was negative. I'm just not going to acknowledge it. People are like, hey, did you know? No, not acknowledging it. Just like I always bring up the example of a man that we worked with that he would not acknowledge his bills. See, he grew up in poverty, and that stretched him into the thought of poverty, right? And then you could say it to a person whose neuroplasticity stretched to the thought of poverty, well, knock it off. Don't believe in poverty. And then you want this reaction. Okay, I'll just think like a rich person. Doesn't work that way. What fired together, wired together in the brain, and what stretched out there is now what we see. Okay? So then to be able to say to that part, stop thinking like that. Stop. It's too late. It already stretched out there. It already grew the neurons. That's why that doesn't work. So sometimes we're on the run from our own brain. We're like, shut your pie hole. And we're arguing inside of ourselves because we want that part to shut down so that we can dissociate from it. We can get away from it. Whatever it is, we deny it. No, that never happened. That usually doesn't work well. But we try to get away from it somehow, but it comes and catches us. And that's when we do the arguments in our head. And you know what I always say, right? Who wins the argument in your head? Do you ever win the argument in your head? Right? That's why it's no good to, like, I'll fight you, and your thought goes this and you say that. And you're like, I'm not going to think this. You can do that all you want, but you will not win the argument in your head. That's why the Bible says that you have to have the renewing of your mind. Like you have to have a new thought about that old thought. You know, like I grew up where I was molested, incested, all kinds of stuff. Okay, so that got me to a point of thinking I could not retract. I couldn't say denial. That never happened. Well, actually, it did. I couldn't say, I'm not going to think about it because I always did. Even if I suppressed it for a long time, it was fluttering in the background of my subconscious. So then you're reacting to something, you're doing something according to what your subconscious is thinking like, right? So now we're going to argue with that thought and always lose. And I don't know why. Probably because we're doing other things. As soon as we go to lay down at night, you're like, oh, I'm so tired. This is going to be so good. I miss my pillow. You know? You freshly washed sheets even. You get in there and you're like, ah. And then right as you go to close your eyes, yeah, what about this? How come that? And you're like, be quiet. No, I'm not doing that. Right? I'm not thinking. You pull the pillow over your head because that's going to save you somehow. Your blankets, you're curled up, and then we'll retract up, because a sign of stress is when you go fetal position, you can't lay straight out in your bed. You have to bring your knees to your chest. And that says, I don't feel safe. Right? I don't feel safe. And when we don't feel safe, we're hearing, we're tasting, we're feeling. All our five senses are lit. And when they're lit, we're not taking it in the regular way. And we might not even be taking in what's real at that point, but it's how we feel. This is what we feel right now. So once we've stretched to this negative thought, and we're arguing with the negative thought, and the negative thought won't shut its pie hole because its job is to argue with you, your subconscious logs something like that. It logged that as truth. And so now you're going to say, leave me alone, stop it, I don't want to hear it. We can even say, I take authority over that in the name of Jesus. Like a good Christian would say, right? To cast down vain imaginations is what the word says to do. You're casting those down from you. But the way your brain works is you have to take on a new thought about the old thought. But we don't want to visit the old thought. So how am I going to take on a new thought about some area in my life I don't want to see? I don't want to talk to that area. I don't want to visit that room in my head. I do not want to be a part of it. But now I'm supposed to think on new thought about doing that. Isn't there some kind of therapy you can do that? Like, hook me up to a machine, it'll make it go away. Right? Be sweet if they had one of those. Now, you can break up a thought with EMDR or things like that. You can do that where it breaks up what wired together in the brain. You can break it up just enough so it's not stuck, but you still have to have a new thought that's going to say something to that old thought. So in the old thought, let's say with my life, I was the victim. I had no say-so. I wasn't in charge. People could use me when they wanted to use me, push me when they wanted to push me. Whatever it was that they wanted, the thought that was trained into me is like, I don't have choice. I'm a kid, right? So if you don't change that old thought, you can be 25. I don't have a choice. That old way of thinking will come into your now. You can be 50 years old and still be thinking, I don't have a choice. So we have to think differently about that old thought. Do we acknowledge what happened? Yes, we do. Once you acknowledge it from the standpoint, I am here, that was there. What has changed? I'm not a victim. Because wherever you're a victim, everyone else is a bully. Remember that. So if you get that victim feeling, that means, I got to protect myself from all of you. You're all bullies, will be the feeling. And we start fights and we do all kinds of stuff because we feel like we're in that past thought, but we're not giving the new thought to the old thought. And so we have to give those past things a reality check. Like saying things like, actually, you don't rule me anymore. I'm in the now. I don't know why you're visiting me about the past. I'm actually in the now. Right? And your brain goes, huh? Aren't we going to fight tonight? I want to make you sad, so you have to think about this. We have to relive it. We have to re-feel it. We have to have a flashback. We have to do something because we're still stuck back there. No, actually, we're not stuck back there. how I know that is I have every right to make a different decision that will change my entire future. That's how I know that. When I was in the past, it was like, what am I going to do? I got nothing. Anybody can do anything. I'm a victim. When you come into the new way of thinking, it's like, no, actually, I'm not a victim. I was one, but I'm not anymore. I'm a grown adult, right? I don't have to be dictated by some past abuse. Did that hurt? Did that wound me? Yes. Am I going to cry about it at times? Yeah. Right? So I don't become, the woman of steel, where I don't feel anything. No, I still have feelings, but my feelings are connected to that, that really stunk that happened, but I'm so thankful I'm in the now. I have been delivered. God's given me a new way. God's given me new thoughts about the old thoughts. So it's the same thing for all of us here. If you're running from a thought, that's something that ballooned out, and your neuroplasticity in your brain fired together, and then it wired together this pathways or these many pathways. And now if somebody triggers that, whoosh, you're right there. And whatever you believed about what happened is what's stuck. Remember I said, when we started Hope Dealers, for some of you were here, I talked about wherever there's a wound, there's a lie. Remember that? Wherever there's a wound, there's a lie. So especially under the age of 13, because you're in the age of directives, and that's the age where your brain says, tell me what to do, I'll do it. Right? Under 13, you're usually not, well, my parents told me not to do this, and here's all the reasons why. Usually we get just stuck on the fact of like, yeah, Dad said I can't. Mom told us we can't go out or whatever. We're not putting together any big picture. We don't even care about the big picture. It's just there's commands coming in. They call that the age of directives. People tell you what to do and you do it. But when you turn 13, there's a chemical that's been missing in your brain that now enters the body. And it's coming in there enough where you start to feel like, am I an adult? No, I'm not. I still want to do this over here like a little kid. No, but I think I'm an adult. Junior high is really confusing. And so when that chemical really seals in, what it says is all your past information now, that's our truth. We're going to go on to the next season of our life, and we're going to build on that. How many of you under the age of 13 had just a great childhood? Good for you. Good. There's a couple. Whoop, whoop. But, if we suffered poverty, if we suffered starvation, if we suffered emotional abuse, if we suffered people leaving and then coming back and then leaving again, or we got to move every so many months, all of that kind of stuff, it sets it up where it was like, here's my experiences, the neuroplasticity fired together, and now it wired together, and there's a belief system around whatever wired. So if a person's been wounded regarding their looks, somebody just said, I don't want you. They could say that in all kinds of different ways, and sometimes you get that message without any words. Just like, and or, little kids at school, no, you're not being on my team. We're not picking you, you go away. That kind of thing. There's a thing that goes, the first thing that happens is your brain will say, no. And you'll try to retaliate against that when you're angry. I'm angry this happened and I'm hurt, so I'm going to retaliate. But the retaliation has a short-lived life for most people. You're like, no, they're the ones who are wrong. And then after a while, you get home from school or whatever, and it's like, yeah, there is something wrong with me. And you'll believe a lie if you're not careful, right? If you don't take care of that, it's going to say, here I had something. It pushed me to a place I'd never experienced before. And now what's the truth about that? I don't have a truth, so what's left? The brain will come up with a lie. It'll be like, well, no kids are playing with you because you're weird. You're ugly. You're unwanted. See, your own parents don't even like you. Your brain will come up with this thing, and I think the spiritual realm helps that out a little bit too. They're like, let's just drive the point home so that you're stuck with this. And whatever you see, when we call it sealing the deal. Once it's sealed in the brain, it's like, yeah, we sealed that deal. Then when you're 55 years old, you still think you're weird and you're ugly. But we're in the now. It doesn't matter. That's the way it's always been. Has it been that way? Or was that a lie that you believed? Has it been that way, or is that a lie that you believe? So when we get that life command, is what it's called, it commands us into what we should do or what we should not do when you get a life command. It's crazy how life commands can come on, and we believed a lie as a little kid, and we're trying to operate into something new now. We want to leave that old way of thinking. We're trying to do something new, and when we go to do it, that command commands us. Kind of like, I think I'm going to go to college. I just feel like taking a course. I think I'm going to do that. All you have to do is say, here's where we're going. And the life commands that are in your brain that are negative will be like, what are you doing? Where do you think you're going? Have you thought about finances? Where did that come from? Maybe a time where there wasn't enough money to have decent clothes for school. Now you think you're going to go to college. Now, what do you think you're doing? You can't get away from the command. So once it's inputted in there, it thinks that that's the rest of your life, because those are the main foundational pathways that you grew things on. And it stretched you to a belief system that once that belief system was there, it's like, okay, I guess this is truth. Well, how long is that truth, which really is a lie, going to go on? Have you, and I'm sure you have, but I'm just asking it as a way of speaking, have you ever gotten a hold of a life command and tried to get rid of it? It's just like, I've got to be done with thinking I'm stupid. I have to be done with it. Okay, be done with it. Okay, I am done with it. From here on out, I'm done with it. Really? That's how it's going to be. You just decided, and it's just going to do that. Well, you first have to have a decision. That's true. But you're not going to move past that until you replace that lie with the truth. This is where the Bible says, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. You have to know the truth. And so if that's the truth, in which it is, I have found that arguing with the lie does not work, but dispelling it with the truth surely does. See, once you've been lied to, it's hard to trust. And what your brain's looking for is the only thing that can dispel a lie is absolute truth. But it's really interesting when the life command comes through trauma, you can have absolute truth and still not believe it. And you'll even say out loud, I don't even know why I just can't believe what they said. Well, you think they're lying? No. But what you're really saying is all the sensation in my body says that they're lying. My thought patterns of memories from the past says that they're lying. Well, what about right now? Are they lying? No. Should we go with the now? Your body and everything goes, I don't know if I could go with the now. That's being a little crazy and wild out there. I'm about to get hurt again but you just said that, no, I don't think they're lying to me. This is truth. It's risky. That's how it feels to the brain. Like, we are getting really risky in this, and I don't like it. And so sometimes it'll bring on a panic attack or something like that. We just kind of go, I got to move away from it. In the brain, there's something called the myelin sheath. Now, the myelin sheath is a fatty tissue that supports truth. And if there's truth in there, which you believe is truth, you might believe that the sky is green, and that's your truth. And everyone looking in is like, I don't think it's green, but I don't want to tell her, You tell her, I didn't tell her, But even if you did say, no, actually it's blue. There's some wisps of white in it, but, it's pretty much blue. You might argue the point, no, it's green, because that's the truth that you believe. It's a false truth, but you believe that as truth. And when a wound happens to us, and our brain comes up with a lie, that is now your new truth. It's a lie from the pit of hell, but it is your new truth. So this is why when we go to step into stretching the neuroplasticity in our brain, we got to go, I'm going to stretch to something new. there's no trust within our 5 recordings areas. They start freaking out. Your sight, your touch, your hearing, and everything gets like you're blinking like a frog in a hailstorm. It's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if I can believe this new truth, right? But you still have, as an adult, we can't act like that. So we just have all that going on the inside while we're like, oh, how's your day? Fine, fine. Right? No, you're not. Your insides are freaking out because you're trying to do this whole new thing. I've asked this question before of people who have had repeated cycles in their life that things went good, they went really good, and then you dropped off a cliff and face planted, and it was really bad. And that cycle says, now we're going to go good, and then we're going to go really good, and then we're going to do that again. So after a while, what happens is if we even acknowledge and say, man, you've been sober for that long, let me shake your hand. That's really good. People go, yeah, don't acknowledge that because you're just telling me now I'm in the really good cycle. So now what that tells me is only a matter of time. I'm going to face plant. I will fall off that mountain, hit my head on a rock. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to go through the healing thing again. So what we say about that is we actually fear success. Because if your brain grew around being unsuccessful, now when you say, here's the way we can be successful, it's the very thing you're looking for. You even prayed about it and said, God, show me how to be successful. I want to. But then when it starts happening, you're like, something's up. Something's coming for me. I can feel it, and you feel it in your body members. You feel it in your cells because there's a pattern that has gone on that says, you don't get to move ahead. I'll let you believe it, and then no. Then we'll believe it, and then no, right? And so what happens is you only do that so long, and the younger you are, the more you'll do that. The older you get, the less you'll do that. The older you get, you'll just go, I ain't doing nothing. I'm not acknowledging successes. I am not feeling anything. Right? People say, you're doing a great job. Whatever. Meh. Right? It's a meh, kind of feeling because we are not going to allow ourselves to feel something good because that's a precursor for something bad to happen. So we begin to get more flatline. Have you ever talked to people? And maybe you've talked this way yourself. If you pay attention to yourself, like right now I have ups and downs in my voices or whatever, but if I started to fear success, my voice would start to talk more like this. You go robot, right? And what that's a sign of is I'm not going to feel anything. I'm bracing myself for the face plant. Whatever happens, happens. Not looking forward to anything. I'm not going to go backwards, but, just sitting here. And the voice tone changes. Because the tone of our voice and the breath that we breathe to project that shows what we feel in our heart. And if we really feel like ain't no thing going to go good, we have to brace ourselves for that. And so you either talk like this all the time and we got to get going, or you'll talk flatline. I'm not going to acknowledge any of this. It's probably going to be really bad, but they tell me I'm succeeding, so I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. So you don't even get to feel good about success. Anybody here experience that? You're like, I just got another coin. Oh. And then you're like, yeah. It's like this double. Have you ever seen the, no, that's not Frozen. It's Tangled. Have you seen the cartoon Tangled? When she gets out of the tower? Okay, so, she finally gets out of this tower she's been in the whole time. That's like your brain. Your brain grew around only the tower. You don't know any other way of life, and finally you set yourself free. And you're like, I'm free, right? And she goes running, and then all of a sudden, I'm a horrible daughter. Then the next time she's like, yes, and then she's like, oh, That's what happens when you get close to success or change, and you've only known one way to do it. It's really important we understand this. This sometimes is where Christians or people who follow the Bible or that way of living get really confused. And I think all people get confused, but it can make a twist on your Christianity in this way. It can be like, I was believing God and God's with me. No, he's not. Well, where'd he go? I don't know, but he's not here now. And then you start counting every little hangnail and everything that's going wrong. See, he's not with me. And then you're back to like, he loves me. You know, it can do this up and down thing. And one thing's demonic, and no, it's not. I mean, we do extremes. But we have to know, Christian or not, we are made in such a way where what we recorded, fired together, wired together, and whatever lie wired around it is now a life command that you believe is truth. Now, other people can look at that and go, man, that is a lie from the pit of hell. And you're like, no, it's not. Or you'll say, you think? I hope that you're right. But it's not the kind of hope we talk about when we talk about hope dealers, right? Because the word hope in the Bible means a joyful, confident expectation. Something good's going to happen. But if you're afraid of success, how can you let yourself hope? You can't get joyful and have an expectation. That could actually set it up. That thing will happen even quicker. So just lay low. Don't feel. Stay away from people because you're being successful. Right? Everything in life gives you opportunity to pass and fail. It's what you believe about fail that causes you to avoid things. Let me explain how that is. If I have one person to say, I just wish I could do what you do. Well, to do what I do, you'd have to do what I done to get here, right? And God would have to have that on your life or whatever. But I've done a lot of really stupid stuff. I do stupid things sometimes. That's not a poor confession. That's a fact. I talked to you about how I slammed my head in the door one day. Didn't I say that here? I never know where I'm sharing stuff. I just do. I'm just like, what? I'm backing the vehicle out. I got the door open. I'm in a hurry. Granted, I had a little low blood sugar, but I can't blame it on that because I'm pretty sure I'd have slammed my head in the door anyway. So I got the door open, and I'm backing up, and then I'm like, okay, good. And then I just slam the door, but I don't bring my head back in. So, what? Okay, so what you believe about that fail, that was a failed mission, right? That's how we say it in the Peltz house. If something goes wrong, we're like, instead of saying, oh, crap, or something like that, we'll say, that was a failed mission. Try again. Let's try again. Or, oh, that didn't go as planned. See how it sounds different in the brain? Like, some people will use their last name, or sometimes their first name or whatever, but most of the time their last name is what I heard, and they'll discipline themselves if they screw something up. Like you spill a glass of milk, and it's like, Peltz, what is your problem? There's nobody else around, but you got to chew yourself out. How many times are you're always messing stuff up, like you're disciplining yourself right there out loud. And it's, okay, so instead of going, hey, that didn't go as planned, got to clean it up now. See, your view of the fail is different. How many of you were raised where you couldn't spill the milk? Yeah, like tasers came out. You were like, And then if you have a big family, it's like you felt for the person who failed the mission. You're like, Jimmy just spilled the milk, and you start looking. Everyone's looking. Is Dad here? Whoever it is that chewed you out. But you had to pause and have that breath of like, we're all gonna die, And really, it's just spilled milk. Like nobody dies over that, right? But there's a sensation that goes through that. And that sensation you can take and apply to all kinds of other things just because you were yelled at for spilling the milk. Because if that created such a big reaction, then what about me dropping this vase and breaking it? Now I'm a real loser, right? I mean, instead of like, shoot, that didn't go as planned. Well, we'll have to believe God for a new one. Throw it in the garbage. And you move on. But if your neuroplasticity it didn't grow into that. It grew into if you ever fail the mission, you are not loved, you are not wanted, you will be shunned. Let the shunning begin, right? Nobody says that, they just do it. And you're just aware you're being shunned. You're like, Aunt Sarah and Grandma, they're not talking to me. We don't know why. They're not returning my call. There's a shunning. It's supposed to make you pay attention that you failed the mission. How many of you, when you gave your children a speech, or you were given a speech by your parents, and they were announcing how you failed the mission? This room is a pigsty. Okay? Right? So now we've established what's gone awry. And then they go on and say, I don't know how many times I have to do it. What is wrong with you? But you can't answer that question. If you say, what is wrong with you? And you go, they're quiet when I'm talking to you. You keep your little mouth shut. I am done with this room. And really, all that projection really isn't about the room anymore. What's happening is the kid's like, yeah, I think mom hates me, or she's losing her mind. It could be both, but I don't. So we're like, okay, are we being obedient about the room because of all that? No, we're not. We feel shamed, and we're acknowledging that if this happens more than a few times, I acknowledge the fact that my mom thinks I'm a loser, and I will never succeed in anything. Well, how many of you walked in your kid's room and went, wow, this didn't go as planned? What are you going to do about all this? Huh? That's usually their response. It's like, what? Because they're expecting you to chew them out and shame them or whatever. I just wonder what your plan is. Because, I'm not cleaning it. Not my responsibility. So how are you going to take care of this? Because you got about an hour. And make them answer the question. So in that question, it isn't like, you loser, you dummy, or whatever. It's giving them an option, like, well, it didn't happen before, but you could still pass the mission. So what's your plan to make that happen? And I've had, many years of doing foster care, and we had 12 kids for a long time and different things like that. A lot of teenagers went through our house, and teenagers sometimes, they're real clean. Most of the time not, right? Because they're trying to figure out what their priorities are, to hang out with their friend versus cleaning this room. This seems more the priority, and so we can't figure out how to get both to happen at the same junction. Get this done and then go. So things get left here and there or whatever. And we turn in pack rats a lot of times. Girls especially are pack rats when they're teenagers. You're a teenager here, you know what I'm talking about. You're like, got to pack all this and take that mascara and do, you don't use half of it, but you got to be equipped and take it everywhere. Well, then you come home and it's here and it's there and it's everywhere. Well, I don't necessarily know that that's failing the mission. That might be learning how to pass the mission with inspection, because people don't do what you expect. They do what you inspect. Right? You just yelling out commands to your kid, get that room clean, and you never show up. You might want to go inspect whether or not they did it. But then when you do, it's them passing and failing. The message that you should be giving is not how disappointed I am in you. Right? I love you, but your behavior stinks. So what are you going to do with your behavior? See how it's a language that's like foreign? We're like, what language is that? What country is that from? Because that is not how most of us were raised, right? On a kind of, and then we're not, too, when we were raised or we were raising our own children. Many times where we're lacking is consistency, and our parents were lacking in consistency. So one day they come in like a storm, and I beat all you kids, you don't get this clean, right? And we're like, oh, we're all crying, and And the next day the football game's on, and you're like, hey, come on and sit in here. Yeah, but I'm supposed to clean my room. Whatever, just leave it, come on. And the kid's like, I can't. Like, what are we doing? I don't even know what the mission is anymore. If you keep changing where it's at, you can't figure out the mission. And so there'll be a failed mission in their mind just because they couldn't figure out what the mission was. So structure says clear mission. People without a plan have a plan to fail. The plan isn't to be so anal that you're caught in a prison and we're making this plan and somebody's holding you to that. No, it's you allowing your neuroplasticity in your brain to set a goal and grow into it. Set another goal or goal and grow into it. It's you setting the goal and growing into it. So especially in recovery from traumas or from addiction, sometimes our goal setting is like, what are we doing? We're not superheroes. You know, we'll be like, okay, I'm done with this. So now I'm going to grow into the world and solve world peace. And we're going to set up all these regiments. And no, you're not. You need to balance today, maybe this morning, and sometimes the moment. If we can nail the moment and be like, ooh, past that mission. Nail another moment. And after a while, you grow into the morning and the afternoon and the night, right? And then days pass by and you're like, yeah, the mission is going well. And that's when we start to feel good, but we're afraid to feel good because we hate to fail the mission. Yeah? I backed into something with one of our trailers. Failed mission. Didn't see it. Plus, I'm learning to drive, and I have a little bit of dyslexia. So when you're driving a trailer, when you turn one way, you're actually turning the trailer the other way. So I always have to sit in there and go, and I talk out loud. I'm like, okay, so when I turn this way, here you thought I was amazing. No, I'm sitting in there talking to myself. This is what we've got to do. And then sometimes I'll be, no, that's not it. You got to go, right? I'll be sitting in the driveway and parked with the trailer, and I'll get it backed in there and whatever. Woo, good mission. I had a lot of good missions until I ran into something. It wasn't hardcore, but it made a dent. It's amazing how I can do other stupid things. Doesn't bother me at all. That one bothered me. It was like, failed mission. Tears, and I didn't know why. I'm like, who's yelling at me? Ain't nobody here. You know, who's going to punish me? I don't know. Who's coming for me? I don't know. And so then I show it to my husband. He's like, yeah, that stuff happens, and, you know, we got a deal. And he's sharing, you know, well, we'd have to do this. I don't even know if we could fix that. And you use a phrase like that. He doesn't know if we can fix it. Now it's worse than a failed mission. It's a really failed mission, right? When I had to think about it, I can slam my head in a door. Ain't nobody coming for me on that one. I'm okay. But for some reason, you dent a little thing on the trailer, and it's just like, yeah, I don't even know if I should drive anymore. So dumb. So what I had to do is research, where in my past did my neurons grow around that's an absolute fail? Well, we lived on a farm. That's unacceptable on a farm. People do it all the time, but it was unacceptable. And I was the only girl for a long time. And we were driving tractors when we were like 8 years old. You know, bring this over here or whatever. So you have that going on, and there's this high expectation. You're going to do something. And then there's yelling and throwing of wrenches and all kinds of stuff. So that's what came to me. So here's an example. Is that happening in the now? No. The thing that I had the emotion about actually was the thing from the past. And I had to give my brain a reality check. I'm not on the farm. We actually paid for this. Trailer's mine. So, you know, yeah, I can wreck it if I want to, you know, so whatever. You know, it's there, but you have to give yourself this reality check, like I'm in the now. And the lie from the past, depending on how deep the wound, it'll be like, no, you've always been like this. Wrecking trailers. What? Could be the first time you dented anything, right? I've never gotten a ticket, right? Driving car or motorcycle or whatever. I probably should have a couple times, you know. But I'm after this record. I want to be that old lady who's like, never got a ticket, you know. Rev my motorcycle, never got one. But there, you know, so there's certain things that are important to me or whatever, but there's certain things that were important to the people who raised me, that it was, you know, or the people around me, that when it's overly important, it's a life and death situation. Like you're never going to get another trailer. Like this dent in the trailer, the whole world knows about. there's a shame with it. There should be a shunning. I'm not saying they did that, but there's a lot of people, that's what you grew up with. If you're watching online, that's what you grew up with. And it was only subject-based. Did you notice that? I mean, an extremely abusive person raising a child will hit all the subjects they can. But usually there's a bend to the abuser where it's like neglect or, issues regarding food. You need to finish what's on your plate. It could be that subject, right? But you can beat your brother up. Who cares? They don't even care about that. But if your broccoli's not gone, see, we're out of balance. We're like picking at certain things. And so we have subject areas that we grew our neurons around that actually have that like, it's a failed mission. If I get anywhere close to that, it's a failed mission. But we can do the craziest thing, slam our head in the door. I didn't fail the mission. I sat and laughed while tears were running down my face because it hurt, because I slammed it really hard. And then I sat in there and I was like, yeah, I probably should have brought my head in. And I'm like looking around to see if anyone else saw what I did. I'm like, oh my gosh, that just took the trophy for one of the most stupid things, and I'm thinking that, But I wasn't hurt and wounded and just so ashamed that it took me out for a week. It's a funny story today as it was back then. That's how it is. But the dent in the trailer wasn't funny. You can't joke that off, right? Because of what? Because of some past thing. See? Sometimes you have to give yourself permission to grow neurons and stretch your neuroplasticity, and you have to give yourself permission out loud. I have counseled people or witnessed people having to give their self permission. I can go to the grocery store by myself. This is my money and I can spend it. I'm not a failure. Right? And if you don't suffer that, you're like, okay, all right, if you want to talk to yourself about that. No, it's a big deal. And you're literally saying, I'm going to grow new neurons, and I'm coming over this way. I make a choice to walk away from that old life command. And I'm saying it out loud. Because I'm going to re-record this through my 5 senses. I'm going to see it. I'm going to hear it. I'm going to do it with these hands. I'm going to touch it. I'm making a change. And then you do it, and it can feel like, I did that. Was I supposed to do that? Is that okay? First, you're like, I'm doing it. And then when you do it, it freaks you out. Kind of like what happened to you when you had your first boundary that made sense. And you were waiting all this time to draw it. And finally, you had a boundary for yourself. And you're like, there, I finally said that. And you walk off. You're like, yeah, I said that. Maybe I probably shouldn't have said that. And then we'll second, third, fifth guess ourselves because we're questioning something we were so sure about in the now, but our past said, are you sure about that? What are you doing? You sure? And it brings your past up into the now. And those are called life commands. So you can see that us stretching means we need to learn how to stretch on purpose. Instead of living like a victim who goes, I don't do anything until someone tells me, and then I grow into it, whether I want to or not. Or to be a person who, you were always told what to do, and now I can't make choices myself. That's hard because we're created in the image of God, and we're creators. I am not God, but He put that into me to be creative. So that means I can do things differently. How many of you were allowed to color outside the line? Raise your hands. Who are you? We need to identify and shun. No, I'm serious though. Did you color outside the line? Because it will really bug you when you're in a preschool class, when you're walking by and you're like, they're outside the line. Are you guys just going to let them outside the line? Because are you just going to leave that? That just happens? I'm an artist, so I do completely the opposite. I'm like, you want to see what it feels like to color outside the lines? And we do. And it's fun. But they always rein it back, and then they'll start to learn to color it, because they know they have the option to come outside the line, but they also have the option to be inside the line. but it's your picture. A lot of kids will color things one color. They'll go through a phase where they're like, the whole picture's blue. And then, we'll do the 100 suggestions. Are you sure you don't want to put green on the grass? Whatever they want to do. They're exploring the crayon, right? Let them have it. Let them do it. And after a while, they'll bring that together, and they'll take all those different colors and do something different with it, right? That might be what they prefer. But it'll bug us, because how many of us got corrected, right? And or shamed by other kids or teacher or whoever. I'm not a lefty, but some of us lefties got shamed. And if people even say the question, are you right-handed or left-handed? There's this like, I got a hand, not your business. There's a feeling that goes with it. You say, I'm left-handed, but it ain't like you're proud of it. See, you probably had a good program around it, but I know people who their parents forced them to, you're going to write with your right hand. We are not doing the left hand thing. Well, here's the thing that's cool about it. I have a brother who can write with both, because he was a left hand and he got forced to be a right hand, and now he writes with both. But do you know the brain actually is capable of writing with both? Who decides that we're only right-handed or we're only left-handed? There's a gravitation in the brain toward one side or the other when you're real small. But if you notice, a 3-year-old will switch. They'll do this, and then my hand's getting tired, and then they'll do this. Or sometimes they do this when they're coloring. Who tells them that they're right-handed or left-handed? We're all trying to figure it out. We need to know. Acquiring nines need to know. And then we'll put it in that hand. Put it. We're going to have to get you those other kind of scissors, right? Because we need to know this. It's like, let them figure it out. Because the truth of it is, you cannot do martial arts well if you just say, I'm right-handed. Right? If I'm right-handed, then I only can do this. Because I'm not a lefty, so only this side of my body works. See how that doesn't make sense? And anyone who's in gymnastics or anything has to learn to use both sides. We've trained our brain that we can only use one, and that's our dominant one. I mean, even boxing, if I'm boxing and I do this, I can connect. Then my left arm is like, stop it. It has that feeling. I can make a jab, but it is way harder for me to make a jab because I was told you're right-handed, you're right dominant. Use your right hand. That's the hand that you need to hit with. Well, why wasn't anybody working with my left side? Because your brain grew around that thought, right? This is why it's important that children learn to crawl before they walk. Because even in physical therapy, if you have a stroke or something like that, one of the exercises, they'll have you lay on your back and you lift the opposites, right? Well, a baby, when they're crawling, what do? They're crawling, right? So it wires the brain for both. Then as soon as they get up and they're walking, we're already trying to figure out, is he a lefty like Grandpa? Got a lot of lefties, and then we're pushing it, like stop pushing it, right? So it's the same thing. So if that's how it is, and you can have somebody like Steven Seagal or my son, Eric, who's a martial artist, he uses both sides of his body. The guy has balance that's unreal. Have you ever tried to do the balance thing? Where you're going across the board or something like that. If you're extremely right-handed or extremely left-handed in your brain, you'll fall off that board. You'll fall off of it. The person who has balance and, they can get in the chi and do all that kind of stuff is because they're using both sides of their brain. We're meant to use both sides of our brain. So it's the same thing, coloring outside the line and all those other things we're talking about. I want you to pay attention this week of things that may come to you that there's a life command that says you can only do it a certain way. How many of you have ever said, I'm stuck? You hit this point where you're like, I'm just stuck. I can't. You know what that is? You've come to the end of your stretch. The brain needs to stretch to a new concept. You don't know what that new concept is, and so you're stuck. But if somebody challenges you with a new concept and you don't think you want to stretch to that, then you make yourself stuck. So we literally, just same way you train balance, where you're standing, you put your leg way out, and you're doing these different things, both sides of the body. It's the same thing with training the brain to try new things, try new food. How many of you eat the same thing over and over? Yeah. Right? And guess what? You'll say to your children, well, my children, they like mac and cheese and this. That's what they like. You know why? Because they never tried anything else, because you only eat that. So in your brain, you already made it impossible for them to eat asparagus. Right? So when Ari was little, and I had a garden, and we just had peppers hanging there and different things like that, I would say, well, these ones are hot. She was just really little. And this one's called a banana pepper. This one over here is this. And all the stuff was just hanging there. And I'd be weeding, and she'd just grab something, eat it. She didn't know she was not supposed to like it. But if you sit with other kids and you put a banana pepper, fresh from the garden, on a plate, what's going to happen? A lot of kids who are trained only eat these certain ways. Oh, that's gross. Ew, why are you eating that? It can have that effect. Or they can go, wow, she's eating that. I want one too. It all depends. They're in this iffy time in the brain as to whether or not they're going to try the new thing. And then I always gave her permission. You don't like it, spit it out. Right? We'll feed it to the rabbits, whatever. I'd give her those. And that was fine with her. She tried it raw, asparagus, she'd go and do. And I'd say, no, you can't eat the rhubarb leaves because your throat will swell shut, just in case you guys don't know that. You can die by doing that. But we'd bust the bottom part off and the rhubarb, and she'd just eat it raw. She'd walk around sucking on it or whatever. And people were like, why does she eat vegetables? Because I'm not telling her, I'm not giving her a message. No, we only eat that. Or, oh, mom doesn't like that. Whatever you like any of this? Do it. All right? Try a beet. Makes your tongue red. Okay. Yeah, that too. Well, then they want to eat it just so they can see, right? And so I'm serious. But if it's a negative to begin with, you stretch their brain to this negative thing. Now, I'm not saying, people will take this to an exaggeration. They'll say, never correct a child because that's negative. No, the Bible says you don't correct your child, you don't love them. So they do need correction, or they die. I'm just saying, especially when they're little. They're out in front of a truck. You're like, get off you got that going on. But even with, I've talked about this before, we have these rock walls behind our house. When you got a toddler up on these rock walls and it's a 6-foot, 7-foot drop, you're like, and your heart, your fear factor part of you wants to go, honey, no, right? But we purposely force ourselves not to do that. You doing okay on the wall? Uh-huh. All right, it's a long way down, just so you acknowledge that. Uh-huh, I'm safe. Right? And inside you're just like, but they have to figure out that balance. I'm not saying let them run on a skyscraper and fall off, but I am saying we used to run on the rafters of the barn, okay? We didn't know you could die, so it would have been nice if we'd have known that part. But on the other hand, we ran on them and had balance because no one told us that we couldn't. The people now that are doing these where they flip and they climb a wall, just incredible, is that supernatural what they're doing? No, their brain doesn't know that they can't do that. They were in training that says that they can, and they just go do it. Skateboarders, the best ones are ones who just don't know that they can't do that. They can do it, and so they just go do it. So there's something to it. The very thing you fear, you will not try. You saw someone else get hurt? I ain't doing that. Well, after a while, someone got hurt here. You're not doing anything. Eventually, you should probably get on a bike and learn how to ride it. So, I mean, we all have a few scars. How did your parents react when you got those scars? Right? Sometimes parents will, especially moms, were, like if a child's lost, first you hug them and then you want to beat them because they ran off and you're like, I love you so much, never leave again. It's like, because you have this double message in your mind. You're like, you freaked me out and I'm mad about it, but I'm so thankful you're here. Talk about a confusing message to the kid, right? But there's something about if they crash their bike or whatever, you can have that same reaction. Talk about confusing from their side. They're just like, are you here to help or beat me? What are we doing? It's like that. So there's something about releasing them to be able to experience a negative. Yeah, you did skin your knee, buddy. Look at that. Huh. Well, that'll heal up. You'll be all right. One time, and I give them a story about one time I did that. Well, you ever do that with a toddler or a preschooler? Now you're into comparing wounds. You ever do that? I taught preschool for many years. And all you have to do is, I got a little scar right here. And they're like, one time in my leg. And everybody's, pulling their shirts up and trying to show what scratch mark and everything like that. Those are their war wounds for learning. Now, you don't want them to be so bad they die, but they're going to have some. And what it does is it gives them freedom to learn through their 5 senses. Trauma shuts down those ports. I don't want to try. I ain't doing nothing. I'm not participating. I don't like groups. I'm not going to. I don't want to be anywhere where even I think someone's going to push me to do anything. That's what happens when you've been traumatized. See it? So what are you missing out on? What are you missing out on? I mean, I graduated the art school of the Art Institute of Minnesota. Sounds really big, doesn't it? The Minnesota Art Institute. Anyways, it was some classes I took in art. How about let's bring it down to the real part? And when I did that, I graduated it, right? Got the certificate and everything. But I did that because I felt like it. I don't need another reason. Sometimes I'll get up 4 o'clock in the morning and I'll be going on my counseling stuff and I'll be like, ooh, there's a class on shame. I think I'll take it this morning. I just take a class because I felt like it. I don't need some big direction or is this okay? And I'm panicking. I mean, should I be doing it? I just do it. It's crazy how much you can get done and how much you can learn when your ports are open to I'm going to grow some new neurons. I even say that to my husband sometimes. What are you cooking in there? I'm growing new neurons, so this could be dangerous. We don't know how it's going to turn out, so you might be on your own, So, but you have to, how many of you don't like to cook because you felt like you failed? Anybody here? Ooh, we got cooks in the house. I don't like to cook because I don't have to do the dishes, so I'm being honest. Because I got a lot of other things to do, and then I weigh it out in my mind, do I really need to eat? That's going to be like 2 kettles and a plate, and Then I do anyway, but I actually think down that line because I'm like, no. So I got other things I could be doing. So, but there's something about cooking or singing. Some of you always just wanted to sing. If not for anything, just to be free to sing. Yeah. I'm going to say something that I'm going to say at Word of Life because I've seen it at Word of Life. I haven't been able to experience it here. Sounds like they're playing drums downstairs right now. But it's amazing to me how we have taught our kids to be stoic. Last Sunday, there were puppets in the Ignite area at Word of Life. And I came over, and there was a couple kids doing this to the song. There's like 30 kids sitting there. The other ones were like, I'm not even kidding. There was a lot of them like, okay, that's puppets. And no movement of the body at all. I have been trained to just do what I want when it comes to movement, right? And I've shared this with you. I mean, we had like 6, 8 guitars sometimes. And, my aunt would play, my uncle would play, whoever, and they would just grab the guitars, and I was a little girl, and they'd say, Mary, come in here and sing Green, Green Grass of Home. They'd always post some kind of, country song or something like that. And I knew all the words, all that stuff. I memorized songs really easy, and so I would stand there and sing. Then I'd go off and play. It wasn't like I had to go, I'm now singing, because I wasn't trained that I couldn't. Even if I didn't sound good, I don't know what I sounded like. But it didn't matter because I was allowed to do it. So I have never had a stoic. I mean, I don't care what's on. I'm music sensitive. My body will start, and I'm like, what am I doing? We're at Walmart, calm it down. It's just, there's a feeling. If I'm driving a car, I'm that person. Yeah, I'm serious. And so it isn't like I'm trying to be cool or something. It's just that pathway grew in my brain. And I have no reservation in it that says, I can't do that. And I actually feel really sorry for, kids when they're not able to participate, or adults who are like, they're raising hands at this church. I do, because I don't believe that it's just a belief system. I believe it's a fear. It's a fear. I'm not going to participate in that. Why not? Well, because, why not? You ever take it down that and ask yourself, why not? Why aren't you singing? Well, you're trying to come up with the answer of well, I've never been a good singer. So? Who told you can't sing? The Bible says to make a joyful noise. It doesn't say to make a good one. I'm not always on key or in tune or whatever, but I don't care. I'm free in that area. So that means I get to express myself. When I pray, half the prayer is singing. I'll walk around and just pray and sing, and I'm free. It's an expression. That's probably why I like to draw, because it's also an expression. Now, here's the thing. When I was going through the Art Institute, the whole first half of the classes was draw what you feel. Woo, right up my alley. Do it. Then all of a sudden we get to this section, they're like, you have to graph your picture. And I'm like, graph what? Now they put me in a box. So you graph the picture, and you got to draw it according to the graph. I felt like I couldn't even draw, because I never drew like that. It was like one of these, I can't come over to that. But I forced myself to, and I grew some neurons around it. Still not my favorite way, though. I see something, and I just draw it. And I have to be in the right mood. See, you can graph something on any day, because it's all mathematical. But if you get in I saw something and I'm going to put it on paper. You know what I'm talking about, Katie, because you do it. And it's I'm going to put, and then once it starts flowing, you can't get it to stop. It's like writing a book can be that way. Somebody tells you to write a book and you go to do it, nothing's coming out. But all of a sudden you get with God and you got this subject and it's so real. And you're like, shh, I'm writing a book. And it'll just come out. Creativity is like that. And I think that we've let Hollywood and different things tell us how we should be creative, and or there's only a few who can. That's jacked up information. So I just want to give your brain permission. Huh? So someone look at me. This is a smaller group. I speak to larger groups than this or whatever, but I still write on my hand. What does it say? Oh, cranberry juice, John 16:3. Something I'm supposed to remember. But I need cranberry juice and bread. I have permission to do that. It's my hand. Right? Sometimes I'll walk around with a pencil behind my ear. Now, are you going to turn on YouTube pastors and they're going to have a pencil behind their ear? No, because there's an unspoken thing that says you can't do that. You can't do that. That's unprofessional. Sometimes I like to do stuff like that just to break the ice. Where you're all sitting here going she's got a pencil behind her ear. I wonder what's going on. Because it creates creativity, because you had to question what was going on. Now the neuroplasticity in your brain is going, well, maybe we're going to grow into something. I don't know. It's different. It's different. So tonight's thought has to do with allowing yourself to try something new. We brought this up at Word of Life. I brought it up here before, but I got to remind you again. Sometimes we're too stoic and reserved, And we'll actually pay money to watch someone else express themselves because we can't express ourselves. That's what we do. We're like, we're going to a concert. Well, those are fun and everything. But a lot of times we're going there so someone else can express themselves. And we go, that's so cool when they do that. Well, what do? Nothing. Well, maybe it's about time to change. Yeah. It was fun last Sunday watching the puppet team because our young people who are now adults and have children, they were the puppet team years ago or whatever. And they were really good at it and very expressive because they liked music, right? And so what I saw last Sunday was that same thing. It's like, whoo, they're rocking it back there. And, you know, you want to bring them to life. You want to have that be not stoic. Who wants a stoic puppet? But you have to have an avenue in your brain open to be able to do that. So what ports are closed on you? Who told you couldn't do something? I'm here tonight to give you permission that all things are possible to those who believe. Behold, Jesus said, I have made all things new. All things new. Let's stand. Thank you, Lord. God, we ask you right now to reveal to us areas where we're shut down so that we can take the new thought and speak to the old thought. Not the same old thought speaking to the same old thought. We're taking the new thought. This is the way, mind, walk ye in it. This is the way that's life. We're going to make a change. I have permission. We have permission to do the new thing. We have permission. Now, I'm going to say this again. I want people to hear online. You've heard me say it before. This is where I have a problem with saying, my name is Mary and I am an addict. You just sealed the deal in your brain. You're what fired together, wired together. There's no more to add to that. You're an addict, so there you are. If you say, I'm presently suffering addiction, you're calling a spade a spade. Yeah, that's what's going on. But my name is actually Mary. I'm not an addict. Just saying. So I'm saying the same thing. This is why they do that, especially like at AA or different places like that. There's a fear that you won't acknowledge your addiction. Well, addiction is addiction. I'm me. So to put I am on it, the word I am means complete. You can't add to it. You can't subtract anything away. It's absolutely complete. And then you put that in front of the word addict. I am an addict. That's a sealed deal. You can't subtract. You can't add anything to it. Your brain hears that and goes, yeah, that's my lifelong journey. I'm stuck now. Who says so? Who says so? God's got higher thoughts. And we take those thoughts on. We still acknowledge addiction. It's a behavior. It's not a person. So we thank you, Lord, that you're showing us these things and revealing them in the mighty name of Jesus. I'll have you take your seats, and I just want to open up, just in case. Is there any questions about the brain or questions about any of the things we talked about tonight? You have anything? I just want to check before we vamonos. Nothing? So if we know how it operates, then we should be able to catch ourselves in something this week. You ever have those aha moments where you're like, oh, that's what she was talking about. I'm doing that thing. If you go to get a job and you say, I could never work there. Really? See, I have the opposite problem. If you said to me, you could never work there, I'd have to go get that job. Sorry, now I got to go get hired there and then tell them I got to leave. I just did it to see if you'd hire. You know what I mean? There's just something to it because all things are possible. Now, there's things that are more of what God wants you to do. So I'm probably not supposed to be a brain surgeon, especially if I'm slamming my head in the door, but I could be one if I wanted to be one, right? So it's just where you put your effort, where you put your passion. So where's your passion? Here's what I've been having people say to me. I don't have any. Red flag. Red flag. Once you've lost your passion, there's no hope building inside of you. There's a passion that comes up, goes, I believe. Well, you're going to get up and do something built on that, right? There's a hope, and we're supposed to be dealing out some hope. So part of me dealing that here tonight is for you to understand, hope is the fuel to your faith. Once it's fueled, you get up and do something. But if you believe that you can't, you're stuck. So then it isn't working on where you're stuck, it's working on what you believe. Why do I believe that I can't? That would be the next place I'd go. Who told me that I can't? Why do I believe that? Why am I scared to try it? Yeah. We say a lot, I have no idea how God's going to do this one, but here we go. My husband and I, and we just go do the thing he asks us to do. A lot of times they'll say, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to show up. Just show up. There's power in showing up. And he'll give you that next thing that you have to do. It's wild. And I love it. I love it. It's become very exciting to me, and I'd probably want to live to be 200 years old and be 10 different people because there's so many new things you could try. Just for fun. But if you want to be well balanced, do something with your mental health and learn some things, your physical health and learn some things, your emotional health and learn some things, but truly inspect your spiritual health and learn some things. You put that all together, you will be a different person in a heartbeat. Makes sense? You are loved and highly favored of God. Have a good week. I also wanted to mention